I didn't tell this story for years for one reason, because when it happened, nobody believed me. And I got tired of being laughed at and doubted, so I just stopped telling it. I didn't tell it for years. And then what happened is my brother, David, my younger brother, David, he told it to a friend of ours, and Chaim Marcus out in
Chaim Marcus
in L.A., who's the brother of Eli Marcus.
That's who's guilty of. That's where I heard this from. That's who's guilty. Like,
but now we're gonna find out if it's truly a true story.
So Chaim, he's the one who got me to talk about it publicly first. And I told him, I don't want to talk about it because nobody believed me for so many years. But okay, here's the story. Bottom line is like this.
Let's get to it.
Okay, so the Chicago Bulls, they used to have a practice facility at the Multiplex in Deerfield.
Mm-hmm.
And so one time I was a kid. It was after Jordan broke his foot. So Jordan's rookie year, I was 10 years old. So this was after he came back. So I must have been 12.
You grew up in Chicago, I presume.
Grew up in Chicago, yeah.
Nice.
That's why I say
Chicago.
Right, yeah. So that's why I dress like the Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
So
represent
from God. So the Bulls were like coming out of practice, and all the kids were like mobbing Jordan because he was, the big star even back then. And so he was getting into his Corvette, his Air 23 license plate Corvette. And all the other kids were running up and they were getting autographs. He was signing their autographs. And I was like the straggler in the back. And I was like the last kid to try to get the autograph. And I don't remember what I had. Maybe it was just a scrap of paper, but I reached in like to the door and I was like, "Hey, Michael, can I get your autograph?" And he says to me, "Get your hands away from the car door or I'm going to slam your hands in the door."
That is litigious.
Were those the exact words, or were there
something like that? Get your hands away, or they're going to get slammed in the door. Something like that.
Oh man.
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Michael Jordan said he's going to slam his car door on my hands.
That's a lot.
That's a foul.
And everyone else did it. It was terrible.
That's flagrant.
And flagrant foul.
Excuse my basketball puns. I'm sorry.
All the other kids got their autograph, and I was like the last kid, so I was the one that got yelled at and get rejected. And so I came home. I told my father, I said, "I hate Michael Jordan. He's so mean." He said he's going to slam. Now, he didn't really say, "I'm going to slam my car door on your hands." He said something to the effect of, "Get your hands away from the door so I don't slam my door on your hands." That's not how I took it. I took it as absolute contempt.
He was going to sever your hand.
Yeah, exactly.
He was talking about natural consequences.
Yeah. I'm going to teach you a hard lesson. That's how I took it. So I was, I hate Michael Jordan.
You heard about the Taubs.
Yeah.
He was going for you.
So my father, Zol Gesundsein, he did the craziest thing, which I didn't even think of it as crazy until years later. He found out where Michael Jordan lived. He lived at that time. He hadn't even bought a house. He hadn't even bought a house yet. Later on, he lived in Highland Park. He had a couple different houses in Highland Park, but he was living, I think it was in Northbrook. It was like near the corner of, those people in Chicago know Willow and Finkston, near Plaza del Prado. I don't even know if it's still there, but there was like a bunch of duplexes.
The address is in the comments.
Yeah. Someone is.
Well, I don't think he's lived there for like 30 years, but at any rate, he had like a duplex in this housing development near the corner of Willow and Finkston. And for some reason, I don't remember the address. Okay. At any rate, but my father found out where he lived, and he wrote a letter, and he didn't write the letter to like the Bulls office, because then it's, some secretary reads it and puts a rubber stamp letter, and it's not Michael Jordan. He wanted Michael Jordan to read it. So he writes to him and he's like, "Michael, you hurt my kid's feelings, and I know you're too much of a class act to not make it right."
Wow.
Okay. So like a week later, my father comes over and he's like, "You got a phone call."
Get out of here.
Right. So I'm like, "Okay, who's calling?" And he's like, "Michael Jordan." I'm like, "No way."
He's going to sever my hand. Like, no.
That was all forgotten at that point.
Okay.
That was just the awe of Michael Jordan's call.
Wow.
So he's like, yeah, Michael Jordan. I'm like, "No way." And I grabbed the phone and he's like, "Hi, this is Michael Jordan." And it was. I recognized his voice.
Unmistakable. voice.
Unmistakable, right.
Wow.
Okay. So he's like, this is Michael Jordan. And I'm like, hi. And he's like, listen, I just want to know something. Are you still my fan?
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah, of course I am. He's like, when are you coming to a game next time? And we used to go to games once in a while. So I forget what I said. I think it was versus Denver. For some reason, that's what I think. Anyways, and he's like, okay, so listen. So after that game, you come down to the locker room, you wait for me, and I'm going to autograph anything you want. So yeah, and he did, and the autograph, and I had that Nike poster with the jumping over the skyline with the skyline in the background, and he signed that, and so that was like an amazing story. And then I told all the kids, and they were like, "Nah, you're lying. It never happened. Michael Jordan called you, right?" Okay, but
This is before screenshotting was an option.
exactly. So there was like no
No
there was no
proof.
evidence. There was no proof, right? Okay, so it took me years before I realized that really, I mean, it was pretty cool, Michael Jordan, to do that. It is pretty cool, but really, it's a story about my father.
Yeah, like that's incredible.
It never even dawned on me that was like above and beyond. But I guess when I became a father, I realized that these are the kinds of things you do for your kids.
Wow.
And I was just in awe of what my father did for me. Because for years, I didn't even think of it as a story about him. Like, yeah, I knew that he was the one who got Michael Jordan to call me, but it was like, Michael Jordan's so awesome. He took time to call me. No, my father's awesome.
Yeah.
I wonder if your father anticipated that Michael was going to follow up on it. And I know he was doing whatever he could
Right.
for his son and to console you that this is what I did.
Right.
And he was going to tell you that. But then Mike called.
How realistic did he think it really was?
Right.
Yeah. I think probably I mean, I never asked him, but he probably had a plan like to follow up.
I was
and
gonna
to-
say if you had said that a letter came back from Michael Jordan,
Right.
my call was that your father forged the letter and
Right,
signed.
right.
But the fact that it was a phone call,
Right.
I thought you can't forge
Right.
that.
And then I
really.
met him in person.
That. Yeah,
Right.
that's
Right.
just
that was real.
that's
I mean,
unbelievable. But you really
That
hit
wasn't
it.
a deep fake.
Yeah, and it wasn't a deep fake. But
How are
hit-
your father's impersonations? Are they any good?
No, not no. He doesn't. My father does a John Wayne impression. He doesn't do a